Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Digital Dentistry Decoded podcast. Dr. Ahmad here, and we are speaking to a company today that actually had a pretty amazing product launch this year. And I'm very fortunate to be joined by the Senior Director of Education Marketing from Medit, Mr. Matt Mark. Matt, nice to see you again.
Very nice to see you, Dr. Ahmad. It's great to be back on.
Yeah, thanks
So
for your
thank you
time,
for the
man.
opportunity.
Thank you for your
Of
time. I
course.
appreciate it. Now, it's fascinating because we spoke about a year ago, and I think it would be great to get like a reflection on how the past 12 months have been. Obviously, let's talk about the Medit i900 Mobility. I have to just share some words. I think when we talked last time, I was quite hard on you guys about, Medit and the acquisition and what's happening. But I genuinely feel 1 year on, it feels like Medit's found their footing a bit. You know what I mean? Things are more stable, I feel. Things are really positive. People are positive. The company seems quite positive and doing well, and the new release is amazing. So what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, we always love to hear that, right? Like that's good that's good feedback. I feel like it definitely has been a journey this last year. We had actually two product releases this year, one right before IDS and then the i900 Mobility more recently. So from the time we spoke last, yeah, there's been a lot of changes at Medit. But I mean, I think overall, our journey since I've started here has been very similar. I think, what you guys are now starting to see is like some of the outcomes of the work that started, really kind of 2.5 years ago when a lot of the changes happened. And, it's been a trajectory of growth the whole time. And this last release, I think was the culmination of a lot of that. And from our perspective, we think we have a really good combination now of technology from the hardware side, some really exciting stuff on the software side, and then all the kind of support and service infrastructure, the things that, kind of really establish you as a company that doesn't just sell a product, but also ensures their clinicians are being successful. That's where I think a lot of our passion has been, is building that side of the business. And I think I told you last time, hey, you don't see it yet because we're investing a lot on people and on, technology and resources, and we're doing a lot of work internally. And I think it's now starting to show fruit in the market.
And I think that sort of stuff is like the less sexy stuff, right? Like dentists, they want
Yes.
product releases, they want big events and that sort of stuff, all the fireworks going off. But it's fascinating you say that. It's all the behind the scenes stuff that kind of goes a little bit underappreciated, I think, in the industry, but it's so critical. I mean, now it's established that everyone will eventually get a scanner. But what's the key missing piece is really utilizing that scanner to its maximum potential
Yeah.
in the practice.
Yeah. And talking to our team recently, we just were kind of reviewing what are our goals for next year and what is that really going to look like. And when you think about it, especially with a piece of equipment like a scanner or any major piece of technology taken to your practice, that initial purchase is really a very, very, very small part of your overall journey with that technology, right? And so when we think about how do we become an even better provider and kind of vendor to our customers, it really actually is more about, well, how do we continue to support you through the next 3 to 5 years? You're not buying a new scanner every 6 months or every 3 months or something like that. It's like a car to some extent. You're going to live with this thing for the next 5 or so years. And we need to be there to support you throughout that entire journey. You can get a great deal, but if the support and service center never responds and they don't fix your car right, you're going to lose faith. And so that's what we've really started to focus on more and more is how do we make sure that every experience outside of that, and even outside that initial purchase, is supported throughout the next, hopefully 5, 7, 10 years. We still have a lot of our i500 customers still very successfully using their systems. So just keeping that journey going the whole way.
And it's interesting you say journey, right? Like to me, you're 100% right because a scanner is just one piece of equipment in the whole digital dentistry ecosystem. It's obviously the foot in the door, and without a scanner, you
Yeah.
can't really digitize. But there's so much talk now about printing and CAD and AI CAD and AI diagnostics and all of that. And you're totally right. I mean, it's just one piece, and it's all about now workflows and how you can actually make everything work together.
And That is what we see more and more too. We see that adoption rate in all those adjacent technologies is really starting to spike in some markets, especially in North America where we've seen really large scanner adoption already. It's what are those technologies that are enabled by a scanner that are going to really start to benefit now from a fully digitized ecosystem.
And what else is curious is that, like, how that entire discussion has shifted towards printing. What are your thoughts about that? I think printers have already surpassed mills and chairside. Is that you getting that sort of data as well?
We see similar data to that in terms of installations. What I find really interesting is more so on the utilization side. There's always been people who invested in a mill or something like that, and maybe it wasn't fully utilized or didn't get as much work as they originally thought it would. But nowadays, I feel like encounter clinicians who own a mill in their practice, they're utilizing it. It's part of their everyday workflow. I don't yet see that with people who own printers. There's a lot of disparity there. Some people are using it for, to the occasional study model, maybe a retainer or a night guard or something here or there, but it's not always an everyday part of their practice. And then you do have your super users who have tried to replace, most of their temporaries and things like that, maybe even testing out some dentures or flippers or partials, things like that. But in most cases, it's very mixed. The installations are high, but utilization is all over the place. And that's what our data shows is a lot of people are sending data to printers, but the number of people who are sending a lot of files to their printer is still pretty low. Whereas if you've invested in a $50,000 plus mill, most of the people from our data are using those. They're using them frequently.
Yeah, that's actually like a really good point. I think you hit the nail right on the head. Without a doubt, those people, even in my reflection, I'm like, damn, you're so correct. Like, so many people are buying printers, but yeah, I mean, when I think about the milling guys, they're milling every day. They're getting into chairside dentistry, CAD/CAM. And I do wonder whether that's a printing issue or it's a bit like caught up in the hype and it's a low cost kind of piece of equipment and everyone's buying them, but then they realize, wait, what do I actually use this for? How do I use this? It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly a gap there, I think, to an extent. It's like, what do I need to use this for in my practice? Because the technology is so, you said it earlier, it's sexy. The engineering on the actual boxes themselves is incredible. They look great in a practice with these, with the tinted shells and stuff like that. So they look fantastic if the patient's like looking in the lab and they're like, ooh, what's that back there? I think you also said it too, which is the cost of acquisition is a lot lower. So, there's some flexibility there. I can afford to buy this and maybe I don't utilize it to its maximum potential, but it's not costing me in a major way to do so. But the potential is there. And I think it's how do the printer companies or the digital workflow companies, either get people to take more advantage of it? Is it AI? Is it just rethinking workflows in general, materials? There's a lot of questions still.
I think one of the biggest question marks still is the material game. There's been a big push to get crowns to be mainstream, and I do feel like there's some isolated pockets, especially in North America, where maybe they are. But it's fascinating. I talk to a lot of the scanner guys and scanner companies, and they're like, if you go around dental clinics, who is ordering a composite crown from a lab? Everyone, when they tick the little box on the little lab form, everyone's picking Emax and zirconia. So there's kind of that really interesting paradigm shift. And I feel like the whole printed crowns thing came in really hot and heavy in the past 2 years. Yeah. It's kind of, I wouldn't say lost steam, but we're waiting for these next generation materials to really see if this is going to be a mainstream thing.
Most of my career actually started in dental on the lab side. So someone would have to show me some really, really amazing, compelling evidence that you shouldn't, be using kind of lab grade materials for a permanent restoration. But you're right. Nobody was sending labs, a composite crown, really, unless it was a full kind of digital wax up where they want everything done. Yeah. If you're doing something really substantial, but nobody, one or two crowns here or there, like nobody's selling that to the lab. That's, I think, where we're going to see a lot of the sweet spot for printers. That and, if people are transitioning or looking to transition from direct restoration, direct composites to some indirect composites, I could see a real value there because you can achieve some pretty great clinical results if you can manage to make the workflow smooth. The design is still going to be a little tricky on that side, I think. And then, can you make sure to dial everything in for it to fit well? But if you can hit those, those few marks, you can have some pretty incredible outcomes. And that's where I've seen maybe the most compelling stuff with a printer right now is inlays and onlays done 3D printed, especially if you're doing, kind of multiple units. That's where you see some big advantages.
It's funny you say if you can get the workflow to go smoothly, because to me, I think that's a big if. I think still, like I say, there's just pockets of KOLs who are very proficient with designing this stuff. And of course, Medit, you guys have your clinic CAD and all of that. You're trying to facilitate that as much as possible for people to be able to design something. But still, I think, I don't know, this whole printing fillings, I know in the industry, for some reason, it's still a big deal to do big fillings, and I don't like to do them either. And some people struggle with it and they want to be able to print them. But I don't know if it's a bit overcooked. Like when you actually consider the design, the printing, the post-processing, I wouldn't say it's overcooked in terms of the result is going to be much better. Not at all. The result is 100 times better. These printed restorations are nice compared to direct composites. But I don't think they're selling the entire workflow. And when someone goes and buys a printer, scans their first fillings that they want to do in a print, I think they're going to realize, wait, there's quite a bit of learning here. And you said it nicely, dialing in your first few prints, you're going to have to figure out the contact strengths. I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's not quite as easy as the marketing materials make it seem to be.
No, there is a technical component for sure. But I will say from a design side, because it's one of the problems that our team is working on right now with our CAD system, and I know of some other options as well. But the ability to do the design quickly, I think we're very, very close to that. And the AI systems are getting very good now at marking even a really complicated margin on an inlay. I think from that standpoint, though, it's just how do you set it up within your practice? The one advantage that I see the ability to do indirects with printing that you don't get with direct is that doctor time, right? If I scan, doctor can be out of the room. The rest of this can go to an assistant, somebody else to manage the printer, manage the design, get that done. They can do, or somebody else in the practice can do some of the lab work while you're waiting. And the doctor maybe has that flexibility then to be more efficient.
100%. And I've always said it, like for years now, digital dentistry is a team sport. You need the whole team on board. And again, to me, look, maybe I'm getting old, Matt, and I'm just more pessimistic about it or something. But my hairline is showing that. But I feel like, yes, the team has to be involved. And I totally agree. The doctor can go do some other stuff. But the key is that training in the team. And you still have to spend time training your DA. How to design. And it's fascinating with the CAD tools, because I'm testing a lot of AI tools at the moment. And there's like a boom of CAD design tools. I mean, there's already 6 or 7 on the market, and not including Medit's own CAD design tools that they offer free.
Yeah.
And that's going to be fascinating if that's like the unlock to get this really going.
It's like everything else, though. It's only going to be one little piece of it, and if you can't get your office manager to schedule it that way, and if you can't get your DA to be part of the process, like it's still not gonna work out, right? That's actually, I think, one of the things from an education standpoint that we're also looking at for next year is, okay, great. To your point, most of the dentists at this point are bought in on, hey, I want to be digital. I want to be the cool guy on the cutting edge who's printing stuff in my practice. But how do you penetrate that next level of clinician or provider in the office? How do I get to the hygienist or the assistant, give them the requisite education that they need for their role within the practice? And so I know that's actually an area we're going to be targeting for. All right, great. We know that while we have to convince the dentist it's valuable to scan, we know they're not actually scanning all that often. So a lot of our continued talk about customer success needs to go down one layer in the practice and talk to the assistant, talk to the hygienist about why this is valuable, why it matters, and also then empower them with the techniques and abilities and capabilities to not be afraid of using it and to implement it quickly.
And you also touch on a really important point. You mentioned the practice manager, because that's also a key part. Again, I kind of overlooked, it's not so sexy part, but You also have to schedule your books differently for same-day dentistry. I mean, it'll change your life. I mean, I'm a big proponent of same-day dentistry. I do a lot of same-day crowns. But it's all these little things that, aren't really talked about out there. And clinicians who are adopting this sort of stuff and want to do same-day crowns and all of this, there's a few pieces. It's not impossible, but there's definitely a few pieces to figure out. But anyway, I don't even know how we got onto 3D printing. I apologize. Bloody 3D printing. It always comes up in the conversations. Let's talk about, before we get into the two new products, and they're super exciting, especially the second one. 12 months review for Medit. You guys have been doing a lot software side, Ortho Suite, AI reporting, a lot of these different features. If you could just give us some, share some ideas with us of how the past 12 months are going, what's kind of the next few months going to be, apart from the education and support.
Yeah, I mean, Medit is kind of one of the reasons that we kind of rolled out a new tagline this year, where we transitioned from kind of a scanner reimagined to infinite possibilities. Is it was a shift in Medit's kind of vision for the company too, which is we were really a scanner provider that just happened to have software attached to it. So now we view ourselves as a software solutions company in a lot of ways. And so just as much of our time is now spent thinking about what's the next innovation on the hardware side as it is what is the clinician need from a software enablement, software support standpoint. How can we better automate tasks? How can we save time in the clinic? Things like that. So one of those kind of major areas that I've been super excited to be kind of, part of, and then also see start to blossom is on our ortho side. This is something that Medit has had an ortho simulator for a while, which kind of gave you a nice visual example of what an end position could be. But we said, well, okay, how do we, one, make that more accurate, more realistic? And then also, how do we go to that next level of enabling you to do production if you want to from that same system and that same workflow? So we spent a ton of time, and we have some great partners on that side of the business that we've used. We're not an orthodontics company. We don't claim to be, right? We're a software company. So we partner with some incredibly smart orthodontic people to help us understand how teeth move. And basically, we programmed realistic simulations, true orthodontic principles. And, we've kind of put together some software that for really the world got to see for the first time kind of at AAO in Philadelphia this last year, but now is kind of slowly rolling out globally. And this is, I think, where, from an innovation standpoint, changing workflows, how do we do things more efficiently? This is another area where, we think we have something pretty unique, which is the ability to come up with multiple different smile kind of simulations and protocols using real orthodontic principles. And then you can quickly, with the patient in a consultative manner, go from that right to a fully designed and staged aligner case, or a case where you can output, a bracket and wire protocol with torque values and everything ready to go, all right from an app that stems right after you can scan. So I think that, we're going to continue to develop in that direction. And that's going to be a major point of focus for us this year, is really trying to find ways to not just help out on the simulation side, but how do you go beyond simulation? And it's kind of connects back to what we were talking about, is like, if you have a printer in your office, are you using it for everything? A lot of orthodontists at this point also have printers, right? There's no reason they can't start an aligner case that same day, even if it's just a passive aligner to get the case going, get the patient invested. But they need to know what that final design is going to look like. They need to know how many stages it's going to be. And we can do that now. And a lot of that is AI driven. So that AI boom that you're talking about. So that's one of the big areas. And the other is really kind of taking almost a step backward in the patient journey. And that's on the diagnostic side. And saying, well, before you ever scan for restorative, this patient's been in your office, 1, 2, maybe 10 times. How many times have you stopped to, take a scan, compare that to all the other imagery you already have, right? You've got intraoral photos, you've got your x-rays, you have a wealth of practice management data on their overall health and, comorbidities, things like that, diseases. how do you combine that data in a consolidated way to make a more coherent diagnosis? And that's where we think scanning needs to be part of that. If you're capturing an X-ray, well, okay, that's great. You can see inside the teeth, but if you don't also capture a scan, well, you can refer to the X-rays later, but it'd also be extremely beneficial to be able to refer to an STL scan at that point too. Get that kind of multimodal diagnostic process happening more frequently. And what we see is it's our job to make that more valuable to the clinician. Why is that valuable? And we think it is, but we have to give more data points. We have to give more areas of analysis. And so that's another major focus area that we've already started on. And you'll see a ton of announcements from us over the next year.
Fascinating. So you mentioned STL scans. I mean, I assume you just mean scans because I would use PRY
Yeah,
or OBJ because of the color, but I get what you mean. Just in case people are wondering, they may be
sorry.
nitpicking, why is it
Yeah.
black and white? But yeah. Basically, you want to use the scans. And I totally agree. Even in my
Hmm.
PMS software, I'm just reflecting while you're talking. When I'm treating my patients, occasionally, I mean, if it's a new patient exam, I'm doing full mouth photos with a DSLR and I upload those into the
Yeah.
PMS. And it's so freaking useful for later, even when you're just talking to
Yeah.
the patient. And it's like, if we have all these scans, it's actually really beneficial for us in communication with our patients to be referring to them. But most people don't because, it's on a laptop somewhere and all of that.
Yeah.
And the diagnostic element is also really interesting to me is because this seems to be like a big wave now that a lot of
Hmm.
companies are trying to do. I mean, Align is doing
Yeah.
a lot in diagnostics. Trios with Trios 6 is trying to
Yes.
do AI diagnostics.
Hmm.
So it's fascinating to see the focus there. And one thing I want to talk about with the Ortho Suite, because I think we need to just like double down on that a little because it is substantial. I mean, I've played around with
Hmm.
it. And just to really clarify for anyone listening, this is not just an orthodontic simulator. This is like a proper orthodontic software, like with Ceph tracing and proper
Yes.
planning. And then what Matt was saying, and I was blown away by this, is that, look, I'm not an orthodontist. I dabble, I do braces, I do aligners. Now, when you do your standard ortho planning, you're doing tracing on a Ceph, and then you kind of have treatment objectives and you can visualize those. And now, all within the software, it's doing those treatment objectives. So you can basically say, I want to extract upper fours and see where the teeth shift. And
Yeah.
not only in 2D, like on a Ceph, but in a 3D scan. I honestly, it's super cool. I just think it's a really cool innovation for the ortho space, which granted, I don't know how many dentists do ortho on that level, to be honest. I think the orthodontists are going
Yeah.
to love this because most
Yeah.
dentists, they just scan, send it to the aligner company, and whatever. The technician who got the 6 month training does all the
Yeah.
planning, but it's super cool to have it there.
I mean, that's the response we got was we introduced it at AAO for a reason because it's really the orthodontists who go, "Oh my God, like I don't have to just like wait for the technician to come back with a plan to distalize the teeth. I can select from a drop down and immediately see, oh, this is what it would look like if I do an extraction. This is what it would look like if I distalize. Oh, okay. And it also, the way the software's set up, you can actually build cases with hybrid therapy where you start in brackets and wires and finish in aligners. And in a lot of cases, you get really efficient treatment that way. Those big movements, a lot of times it's a lot faster to do those with traditional fixed orthodontics. But those small micro adjustments, the finishes of cases, aligners are often the best tool for those. And so it's more about meeting the clinician and the patient where it's best for both of them and not necessarily saying, well, you sent us the case, we sell you aligners, so we're going to build the whole case in aligners. And to your point, the GPs, they may say, well, I'm doing 1 or 2 cases a month. That's not a big difference to me. But if you're an orthodontist and you're starting a case every single day, that has a capability to offer you some flexibility that maybe you've never had before. So that's the response we've gotten when we get to that exact screen you're talking about where there's an STL overlaid of a Ceph, and then we go to the drop downs, you show them 10 different options that they can see, and the AI simulates it in 5 seconds. So like I've never been able to do that in my life. And normally it would take me weeks of going back and forth. That's the kind of stuff that we're hoping to enable, not just in ortho, but across the board.
And what's really fascinating is kind of the pivot into ortho. I'm curious, how was the response? I assume they were like blown away because I am not aware of any other scanner software that does this. In fact, most of the time you have to use third-party software to achieve this.
Yeah, we're kind of I think the first scanner company where that's been an integrated piece. And yeah, the reception was great. We only had a beta available, but yeah, I mean, I think we showed it to over, had one-on-one demos with over 100 orthodontists in a 2-day period, and we now have well over 2,000 people globally in the beta who are just like, who don't have it released in their country yet, but are like so eagerly awaiting this when it's finally fully released, because we do have to, wait for the regulatory clearances and stuff like that. But yeah, no, the response was overwhelming, and you get feedback like that, and it makes you remember like, oh, this is why we work on this stuff. This is why it matters, because sometimes you don't always know when your head's down for a few months. But yeah, it was validating, but it only makes us want to kind of go faster. And it just means that there's more and more stuff getting added to the product development roadmap every day, basically.
I can imagine when you're in the trenches for months, it can be pretty hard. And like you say, the feedback is just validating that you're on the right path. And I was just even thinking that even for GDPs, I mean, even if you don't do ortho, if a patient's just even curious about that, being able to scan and do all this with AI and even just simulate what, ortho would look if you took out the teeth. I mean, even if you're not an orthodontist or do braces, you still know if that looks right or wrong. And even being able to preempt your patients and tell them if they need extraction orthodontics or not, I think it's just super cool.
The great part too is if they say, well, that's a position that looks good, I think I'd be happy with that. You can also then progress quickly, and you don't have to go in and fine tune every stage. AI will stage the case for you. So you can at least give the patient, say, hey, if you like that final position, right now I'd estimate that would take a year, 6 months, something like that. You can at least give them an idea of treatment time instead of saying, well, that's a pretty good looking final position. Come back in 2 weeks and we'll talk about what that looks like, right?
You need to close, as I'm sure all your sales guys know. You have to close the case. It's all sales.
Yes, yeah.
Fascinating. And the software is all the rage. I mean, it's been that way for a while. Do you think hardware is still kind of tapering off? I mean, we're going to get into the new releases soon, one more exciting than the other. I mean, one you added a button. I hate to say it. I'm sure you're sick of me.
You can be honest. You can be honest.
It's like, damn it, I have to join this podcast again. But okay, so you added a button, whatever, and then you did iPad scanning, which I genuinely think, and I'm not gassing you up, I think you guys set basically the next market trend. I mean, after trying it, I'll be surprised if we don't see more iPad scanning apps. But apart from really talking about the mobility in a second, like hardware side, do you think, it's plateaued for a while? I did a big study, and I keep mentioning this every podcast. And for people who are listening, I'm probably sick of me mentioning this because the stupid paper isn't published yet. But academia takes ages. But I basically tested all the different scanners on a scientific model and scanned like 20, 30 times. Medit scanners are one of the most accurate on the market. And I mean, the top 5 are all within about 5-10 microns of each other. And we go all the way back to like Medit i700 doing really well. And I just feel like in terms of accuracy and what we can draw out of these scanners, to me, it feels like it's been good for years. I mean, even Trios 3 was good. Now it's kind of all ecosystem, software, workflows, etc.
Yeah. And I think the accuracy that you're achieving when you use a scanner well and correctly and proficiently, is that outcome somewhat commoditized at this point? I can't disagree, right? The actual difference to you as a clinician, if something is 5 microns of, discrepancy versus 12, is completely negligible. You won't ever notice that difference. But what I think is there's still some ground to be made up in terms of, there are error bars, obviously, on all of those kind of, you're in the midst of the research, right? So like, that, well, if you don't do it well one time, or if you have, some small issue with the scanner, or even something as simple as like, hey, there's a fingerprint on a tip or something like that, nobody noticed, and you send it to the lab. So there's still some there, which is how do we make sure it's just as accurate for every single clinician who uses it, right? So if you're someone like Dr. Ahmad who scanned, 100,000 times and you could probably do it with your eyes closed and you're going to get, an amazing result. Well, I have a dentist who's never scanned before still who, visited our office a few weeks ago for like a basics training. They've never scanned before, right? How do I get somebody like that to still have really amazing results? And I think that's where I would love to know, like, I would guess the premium hardware solutions are still doing a better job. But to your point, it is somewhat commoditized. There is other really exciting things coming on the hardware side, though. And it's not so much just can we get more accurate or get faster? It's in how we capture and really the imaging techniques being utilized. So it won't, I think, be as much iteration as you'll see some really new imaging technologies introduced to a professional market over the next 2 to 3 years.
Damn, man, you're putting me on a cliffhanger here. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Well, I mean, you've seen some of them at IDS this year. I think we saw OCT scanners, which basically can start to penetrate a small degree, right? So you can start to go a little bit below kind of that surface level, start to capture some information there. Right now, I would say that technology is still very much in its nascency, right? It's developing. It's not ready for a mass market. You'll get some really early adopters using it here and there. And then it's also a matter of application. At this point, it doesn't have as wide an application set as an original Intraoral scanner did. But it's coming, and I think the people who will win in that space are people who can say, okay, how can I combine this technology and the advantages it has with the gold standard of the intraoral scanner and make it an integrated product to some degree.
It's funny because I was just speaking to the True Abutment guys in the previous episode, and they were talking to me about iPad scanning, and I was just like, holy smokes, things may change very soon. So that's exciting that there's still room for improvement in the hardware front. Now let's talk about the i900 mobility. I think it's about time that we speak about it. So iPad scanning, and honestly, I think it's epic. It was super nice to see you and the team at Napa at the event. We showed it, and now I've obviously had it for some time in the practice. And with the whole iPad scanning, I feel like it's one of those things where you don't really get how cool it is until you try it, because like on paper you're like, oh, whatever, I have a laptop. I mean, what was the point of the iPad scanning? But then you try it and then you realize, like, I'll give you a basic example. We talk about patient communication and the diagnostics and everything that we're trying to do with our patients. You sit the patient down, you take a scan of their teeth. It's kind of awkward. They're either looking to the side at the laptop, or you get them up and you stand them next to you near the little cart, compared to, let's say this is an iPad. It's not, but you just put it in their lap, and everyone knows how to hold a freaking iPad. And then there's all the little Mac things that are just amazing. I mean, I'm a big Mac fanboy. I always loved Windows, but Apple's just legit. The resolution of the screen is just way better than any laptop. The images look sharp. It's crisp. The other things I was noticing is it's just snappy. Like Apple doesn't have loading screens. You turn it on, you're ready to scan. One other thing, there's no power cables.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
Yeah, like
so
there's
big.
so much quality of life in there that when we say iPad scanning, it's like, who cares? But then you actually try and you're like, yeah, this is the future. I really think you guys set a market trend there. Now, and granted, I don't want to get killed by the 3-disc guys. I know they had an iPad scan, but I feel like you guys led with that. That was kind of, you led with that being the main thing, whereas 3-disc kind of led with the diagnostic platform they were building. But yeah, I mean, tell us more. The i900 mobility. Go ahead.
Sure. So I appreciate the preamble there, because, I mean, when we started thinking about, you may be aware of our old i700 wireless scanner, right? That was released a year after the original 700. It's been on the market for a long time, and we knew we needed to update that technology, but we didn't want to approach it the same way that really everyone else has approached wireless, right? And that was really it. It was an idea of like, well, we could build another wireless scanner. And I'll talk glowingly about some competitors. Like, there's already amazing wireless scanners on the market. So if you're just going to build another decent wireless scanner, are you filling any new need? Are you doing anything differently? And we didn't really think so. So we looked, okay, well, what are the actual frustrations? What are the things that even a wireless scanner still doesn't do well, right? When you fully set everything up perfectly in your practice and you never move from that operatory where you set everything up, it's great. But as soon as you have to move from one op to another, oh, well, now there's a dongle or there's still a laptop and I still have to move that with me. I still have to be plugged into power, right? I have a cable for the dongle, can't forget that, right? And so you start to realize, well, okay, it's great in this really contained space. But when I start to move outside of this one operatory, there's a lot of limitations that come along. And suddenly, and we know this actually just because of the amount of like travel we do, right? As educators, like yourself, like you travel all the time. Is it easy most of the time to take wireless technology with you? In fact, from my experience, the easier scanners to travel with were the wired ones because I could just bring a wire with me, plug it in my laptop. I didn't have to worry about Wi-Fi. I didn't have to worry about setup, and there's nothing to do.
On that
So
topic,
we're like, well,
sorry, even my freaking headphones are wired now. I'm sick of all the wireless stuff.
yeah. Right. And it really is because it's a wireless experience, but it's not a mobile experience, right? You are in the space you set up the wireless scanner in. So we said, how do we turn this truly into something that moves with the clinician just as easily as they want to be able to move around? And that's where the idea of the iPad came from. And exactly what you hit on. The iPad offers some benefits that really no other platform does. We don't need to be plugged in to power, which is a huge thing, right? The screens, the technology is amazing now. They just rolled out a brand new iPad with a new M5 chip. The chipset in the iPads and a lot of the Mac products, for our technology, it performs better than even the best NVIDIA chips. So from a performance standpoint, we're like, okay, well, we have the best performance here. We have no power requirements. We've got a beautiful screen. It's this really tightly contained package. The new iPad Pros, they're so thin, you almost feel like it shouldn't be possible how lightweight these things are. And so, okay, well, that is really a mobile platform. So how do we leverage that for scanning? And basically it just got to the point where the technology caught up to the point that it can do everything a PC can do in this really tight package. And it was just a matter of making sure the software worked. We had, I think, a little bit of a leg up because Medit has been Mac native, for so long, right? So we have a really deep understanding of the platform. And a lot of that goes to our CTO, Michael Lee, who he's on every new Mac product. And like when the original i900 came out, we were scanning on an Oculus Rift just because he made it work.
What a legend.
Right? And
I feel like we need to have a moment of silence for Michael. No, I'm just kidding. But the guy's a legend.
No,
the guy's a legend.
Michael is still very busy. He was the one making sure it worked on an Apple Vision Pro, I should say, not an Oculus. But he's the person pushing the boundaries constantly. And when he figured out he could make that work technically, everything else kind of took off from there. And so where we've seen really kind of the market response to that, and you mentioned you kind of need to see it sometimes to truly believe it, is once you get somebody to pick up the iPad and the scanner and it's already connected and you just have these two things in your hand, you go, I can scan, and it works really well and it's seamless and there's no lag. Once they see that and feel it and experience it, and they're like, yeah, now just walk to the next room or walk down the hall, or, oh, you need to go to the different office tomorrow? Just take your iPad with you, take your scanner, and you're good to go. So that's where, we think it's not just wireless. It really needs to be a true mobile experience, and the clinic follows the dentist wherever they are. So that's why we think this is going to be not just one product release. For us, the software that runs on the iPad is just as important as the scanner itself. And that's a platform we're going to be expanding. We think dentistry in the future, it will be more beneficial for the patient if more things are there, right? To your point about engaging the patient. If you hand a patient an iPad, they know what they're seeing. They can experience it right alongside you. And so that trust, that connection happens instantly.
It's fascinating how you mentioned the iPad thing because, more and more technology is going on these freaking iPads. Like, I will not be surprised in the future if that's going to be the primary platform that you use for all your digital stuff. What's really interesting though is like with the mobility, you mentioned like true mobility. And I really like that idea, to be honest, because you're right. I mean, a wireless scanner is somewhat limited. I have to say, though, how are you guys dealing with the wireless, or let's say the scanner being on the Wi-Fi network? So for those who
Mhm.
may have no idea about the mobility, I
Yeah.
mean, please go read like the blogs. I write them about all the details. But
You've got some great
yeah, I
videos
got
too.
videos, I got
Yeah.
blogs. I love this stuff. But essentially, for those who are listening, you have an iPad, you have an iPad app that you download from the App Store. This
Yeah.
is a brand new app. This is not Medit Link, a port of
Correct.
Medit Link,
Yeah.
a brand new app, which I'm actually curious. How long did this freaking take to build? But anyway, brand new app. Interestingly, it does link with your Medit Link account. So whatever you
Yes. Yeah.
scan on your iPad does show up on your Medit Link account, which I think is genius that you guys did that, because it would have been so fragmented if you didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then you scan on this iPad, and how the scanner itself connects to the iPad, because there's no dongles or anything, you're not plugging it into the
Right.
iPad, is
Yeah.
through Wi-Fi. Now, one other scanner tried to do Wi-Fi scanning, and that was Prime Scan 2. And I thought it was like incredible technology. I still believe that, scanning direct on
Yeah.
the cloud. And when I post about the i900 mobility, people are kind of getting confused. So just to make clear, this thing is
Sure.
scanning on the iPad locally.
Correct. Yes.
The wireless is just for the connection.
The wireless is just sending the data from the scanner to the iPad, but the actual processing, the rendering, it's happening locally on the iPad. And I think the biggest thing that, and this is a disconnect, and this is where I think a lot of people, maybe it helps kind of make the connection for them, is we don't need to be on the internet to scan with the i900. When you demoed the scanner the very first time, which was the first time anybody had outside of Korea had gotten to demo the unit, we weren't on the internet. We were just on a local Wi-Fi network.
Right.
So really all you need to do is connect the two devices with a local network and you can scan seamlessly.
Does that speed impact though? Like, how are you guys combating with the
Yeah.
issues with Wi-Fi speeds in clinics and stuff?
It really all comes down to the router that is in place. And that is really a critical component. I will say it's a technical hurdle, but it's one that is extremely easy to overcome. So we need what's known as like a Wi-Fi 6, preferably a Wi-Fi 6E or 7 router. Those you can get amazing Wi-Fi 6E or 7 routers for $150. So it's not a major component. And if you haven't upgraded your practice with something like that, it honestly could probably help you for everything else you're doing in your
For
practice
your
as
reels
well.
and your TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, if you're scrolling Instagram, my guess is you'll have a better experience doing that, with a better router. So that component is required, right? So you want a high bandwidth router, and then you want to be on basically just a higher gigahertz band, so a 5 or 6 gigahertz band. I don't want to get too technical, but basically less noise, less interference on the band. So you get a much better experience. Now, from that perspective, you still do need to connect to a network, right?
You guys
So
make that
we don't
super
have a
easy, by
way.
the way. It's super easy through the app.
Yeah, that's hopefully the goal, right? You do it once too, and then it remembers everything, and you don't ever have to do it again. You just turn it on, it turns green, it's connected, it's good to go. You just have to enter that Wi-Fi information that first time you connect the scanner. And from then on, it's just as simple as turning the battery on the scanner, and it'll come to life and it'll connect automatically. I think the really exciting stuff that we've been playing around with more and more is how do we make it even more of a mobile experience? Because it is still helpful to be on the internet, even if you don't need it to scan, but it's still helpful to get that immediate case sync. Or if I want to send files to a lab, I still have to be on the internet to do that. And we've actually had a lot of success just using something as simple as a mobile hotspot. Even the hotspots on some of the new phones
No
are good
way.
enough.
That's crazy.
So if you can turn the hotspot on your new iPhone, most likely you can connect your iPad and your scanner through that hotspot and scan. And so if you have a good hotspot connection and like a 5G or 5G LTE connection, like for your cell phone, that works seamlessly most of the time. So it really is that easy. You don't need any, specialized super secret hardware or anything like that. Nothing crazy expensive. That's the goal, right? It's not going to be a true mobility experience or true mobile experience if you have to lug around some other major piece of equipment to make it work.
And you mentioned the Apple chips. This was the crazy thing that I found. It's like you look at this iPad, you look at the scanner, the iPad's super thin, and you're like, okay, so Medit's trying to be fancy here. This is going to suck. That was my thoughts. I was like, yeah, it's going to be laggy. There's no way in how they could pull this off on an iPad. And then you try it, and it lags less than my freaking Windows laptop. And I'm just like, what the heck? Like, my Windows laptop gives me the shits. It's lagging, and I'm like, this is smoother. And honestly, that was kind of the moment when I was like, yeah, this is the future, no doubt. And I'm sure you realize that more companies are going to jump on iPad scanning. No doubt.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will.
We've seen, I mean, you already mentioned it, but there's a ton of technology that's moving to iPad. And it's not just to be flashy. It's not just because it's a slick piece of technology and you get to leverage the Apple brand. It's because it works amazingly well. And, you mentioned the true abutment guys, right? That like using it as a camera system too. Crazy. Apple's done incredible things with like facial recognition technology and things like that. And you get access to all that technology by using an iPad. And so for us, we're like, this is a platform that not only is innovative right now, but something we think there's a lot of potential to grow with.
I think you guys should make an iPad app within that for face scanning, I should say. You already have an iPad app. I think you guys will make a face scanning app. I think I just clicked it. So imagine that within the same software you scan and then face scan. That'd be freaking epic.
I may or may not be able to talk about things like that. So
yeah, okay. So sweet, the mobility. I mean, look, my only critique, honestly, next generation just make it smaller and lighter, but that's okay. Forgiven. It gets cool points. It's pretty chunky for a wireless scanner.
So can I defend that slightly?
Please.
Can I defend that slightly? Please. All right, okay. So this is my one defense, all right, and then I'll shut up. So the one thing that we are doing differently with our wireless that most other wireless scanners don't do is basically the Wi-Fi adapter that allows you to connect to the internet is built into the scanner.
Yeah, that's true. Fair.
So that's why most of the others need some sort of dongle or something. We tried to build all that technology inside the scanner so you can have that one-to-one connection with the device. And so it does require a little bit of extra componentry, but for the overall experience, we thought it was worth it.
100%. It was totally worth it. No dongles, no nothing. You just turn on an iPad and you connect it to your scanner. You're like, what the heck? I'm a big fan, honestly. I think it's super sweet. But what's really interesting to me is, so for people to realize something is that, again, the app for the i900 mobility is different to Medit Link. It's a whole different app for scanning. And I want to get onto some of the funny questions I've been asked as I've been posting this by dentists all around the world, and we can almost go through FAQs. Yeah. But the app, what's fascinating to me is that you guys have kind of taken a step back. I mean, Medit added so many features over the years. You moved the entire industry to have heaps of features in their scanners to be competitive. And in a way, the software started looking bloated, a lot of buttons, no one really uses them. I'm sure you realize how many times people actually click around. It's probably not many. And you kind of tried to simplify that with a simple UI for original Medit Link on Windows. This new Apple software or iPad software is totally streamlined. I mean, I like it way more. There's like nothing on the screen. And it obviously you have less kind of screen on an iPad. I mean, they're still pretty big. Yeah. But it's, I'm trying to understand. You guys have obviously made that decision with intent that you wanted this to be super clean, super modern looking. There's really just scan, stop scan, and that's pretty much it. And the icons for upper, lower bite. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that was 100% intentional, right? And some of it was envisioning what's the most common workflow that the everyday practice is doing with a scanner and with a laptop or an iPad in this case, right? There's a lot of amazing clinicians out there who are doing really, really complicated things that use a lot of our features. But if you're scanning for a crown on, and I'm going to use American numbers, on 28 or something like that, right? You're prepping, you're isolating, you're scanning, and you're sending to your lab, right? And it's a relatively simple procedure, and it doesn't need 15, different buttons. It doesn't need a shade match. It doesn't need a lock feature, and there are use cases for all that stuff, right? But it's just what's the most common workflow. And that's kind of what we kind of almost went back to square one and said, if we were rethinking scanner software from the ground up, where would you start? And that's where we started. And we said, let's make a workflow for the dentist who's scanning for a crown or for an appliance and sending to their laboratory. And let's just build the most streamlined possible interface around that exact idea. And so that's
There's
kind
no
of the
more
concept.
buttons. There's like no more picking inlay, onlay, blah, 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 blah. It's just like, it's genius. And any company out there, you should look at how Medit did it on their iPads, because everyone should do it this way.
No, don't tell me.
Yeah, sorry. You start the software, it tells you, do you want to do an express scan, which basically means straight to scanning, which is freaking genius too. So I just turn it on and I can start scanning. If you didn't and you want to choose, it's just all workflow based. There's no more picking the material and whatever it is, because honestly, most of that's communicated with the lab. I mean, you can add it if you want, but it's just workflow based. Restorative, ortho, implants. And that's all we really need. That's pretty much it.
And a lot of it too is just, it's not that the features and the advantages of our core system aren't there. The design philosophy is just, okay, how do we automate as much of that as possible and just take it behind the scenes, right? You can still, if you're someone who's really like wants to dig in and understand every little nuance, you can go into our settings and you can tweak a ton of different things. But the goal was, how do you offer a really great experience, even if you're just using it the way it was defaulted out of the box? And yeah, you still get some of the advantages of like, it'll trim away things automatically or filter things out automatically. But the goal is, from the user perspective, it should feel seamless. You don't even notice it, right? You don't need a button to do that. Like, if the software needs to do it, it'll do it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But just focus on scan effectively, take a great bite, send it to your lab. And to your point, most of the labs at this point, they know what you're going to order. If you send a posterior crown, they know what you want, right? And it's the times where you send it in and they're like, wait, he never asked for lithium disilicate. I'm calling him today. Like,
that's why it's freaking A2 as well. Who takes a shade? No, I'm joking. But yeah, no, it's 100%. It's nice seeing it reimagined, and I think this was a really smart push into this kind of. I mean, I don't want to call it wireless scanning, but I feel like this is very interesting. You're going to get a lot of excitement. Whereas the Prime Scan 2, which was also wireless scanning, and again, hand on heart, I think it's incredible tech that we can scan on a freaking cloud. But they had a lot of flack, and they still have a lot of flack with that scanner. So that's kind of fascinating how two different approaches to this Wi-Fi scanning. Should we go over some FAQs?
Sure.
Real quick to wrap this up. Like I got a lot of questions about Medit i900 mobility. So first question I get asked all the freaking time is this only for the i900 mobility?
Yes. Okay. As of today, it is only for the i900 mobility. And that's because we don't have a way to tether anything else to an iPad via connection.
Like a dongle or anything.
The only way it works with an iPad is wirelessly. So we actually don't have the other option right now. We're working on some solutions for the other scanners to potentially open up access. I don't have any dates or anything like that to share, but it's a sentiment that's been, kind of internally talked about, but also we've heard from some customers. But right now, Medit Link Express and the iPad only for i900 mobility.
And the other question I always get asked, and there's kind of like jabs from different companies as they look at this. They're like, oh, you can't send the scans to a lab from an iPad. I kid you not. I've been told that.
I will, that's a very easy one to squash. Yes, there's an order button at the bottom right of the screen. And one of the great things, if you already are a Medit user and you're transitioning to i900 mobility, your same partner lab list will be there. And you can select from your known labs. You don't need to find new connections or add new labs. They'll all be there. You just pick your lab you want, hit order. And again, the RX is extremely simplified, right? And you don't have to enter as much detail and stuff like that. We try to automate as much as we can. But yeah, the quality, things like that, the scan quality is just as good as what you're getting on a laptop.
The scan speed is fast, man. The scan speed is like really smooth. I actually have a question. Do you think for Medit, this is kind of the This is kind of no, I wouldn't say focus, because all the products get their attention, but do you think this is kind of the next step? This is where the developments are going to go into to flesh this out? Because there are some limitations. A lot of people ask about the apps. They're like, why are the apps not on the iPad?
Yeah.
And so do you think this is going to be the evolving thing in the next 12 months?
I mean, are we going to continue to build on the Medit Link Express platform and on the iPad? 100%. Yeah, I mean, this was, as I said, we envisioned what's the absolute kind of lowest common denominator, most common workflow, which is scan for, relatively simple case and send to a laboratory. And that's what we built, the product and the workflow. And now, yes, you can do more, and you can still use those cases you can still use a mobility with an iPad for a very complicated case. But yeah, you don't have access to some of the features, you don't have access to the apps that way. So we're still going to be continuing to add to that platform over time, right? There's a list of features we're going to be rolling out to the i900 Mobility, the Medit Link Express platform, and to iPad. Apps are definitely one of, we get that question a lot, is, are they going to be available on iPad? We think we have a better kind of solution for that than just adding them to the iPad directly. And then, just some of the other features, things like that, yes, they're going to roll in over time. And I think that's where, we'd love to hear from the doctors who started using it, of like, hey, if there's something that you feel like is a need, please let us know. And what we found is a lot of times it's actually not that difficult to add additional features there. It's really just, how do we add what's exactly needed without bloating the interface? We don't want to get back to a place where there's 40 buttons on the screen or something like that.
I'm glad. It was exciting when those buttons were getting added, and it's funny, like, you look back and you're like, it's so much nicer now. And it's fascinating to see that kind of retrospect and reimagining what a scanner software should be. Matt, I think I could speak to you for another hour and you're too nice. You don't tell me to shut the hell up and I need to go. You're such a nice guy. Poor guy's probably got another meeting. There's still a lot to talk about, and maybe I get you back in 6 months or something, or sooner, because we still haven't touched on All-on-X workflow with SmartX, which is basically the competitor or Medit's answer to the whole elite IPG, because horizontal scan bodies work. There's a lot that we can talk about still, but look, my friend, I really appreciate your time. I guess to close off, what can you give us for next year for Medit? What's some of the exciting things that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Some of them I touched on already, which is look for, and if you're someone interested in exploring new opportunities in the orthodontic space, check out our Ortho Suite. We're not just adding the current set of features, but we have a ton more coming there. A really, really aggressive development schedule that we're going to talk a ton about, but it's extremely exciting.
Is it free, by the way? Sorry to cut you off. Is it free, the Ortho Suite? That's probably something people are wondering.
So as with most Medit apps, it's free to access as long as you own our scanner. You can do simulations and things like that. You would never pay anything until you go to export a file. So only if you're exporting files to you print or send somewhere, then triggers a fee. But if you just want to use it as a simulation tool, that is completely free.
Nice. Yeah. Epic. And you were saying?
That's a huge area of focus for us. We have a lot more still coming on as you touched on, the diagnostic area is something that, again, from a Medit perspective, right? We see what's out there. We know what the solutions look like. And we're building some things that I would love to be able to talk more about. Some pretty cool ways to utilize diagnostic information during the scan process to improve that. And we think we're going to have a really exciting take on that kind of solution that is something that is a good fit between beneficial to the patient, provides a lot of value to the clinician, and also incentivizes them to say, hey, how do I turn a scan not just into this tool for restorative practice, but really a part of my every patient exam, because it's now a critical piece of my imaging and the information I need to talk to a patient or to schedule the next appointment. I need to know what that scan looks like. And so we're building some solutions in that space. And then we have a lot of existing applications already, and we have some major announcements coming for a few of those major applications in 2026. So I would say the tenor of 2026 for Medit is going to be a lot on software innovations, adding to our platforms, things like that. And, there may be some hardware stuff kind of cooked up in there, but I can't talk too much about that. But we might have some interesting things. But we're pretty committed to the i900 mobility as a platform. Medit Link Express is a platform. We think that technology is a good foundation for us, and we're going to build all the software to really support it. So it's going to be a big year of software innovation for us, and I'm only kind of teasing the very, tiniest bit of the iceberg here. So I'd love to come back on, and, once we have some more announcements that are tangible, we can dig into some details on.
Amazing. Look, man, thank you so much, Matt. As always, I really appreciate our chats. I have a lot of fun, and look, time flies. It's been an hour. It's just great to talk to you, man. And it's funny. We said it at the start, the past 2 years have been pretty difficult for Medit, that's to say the least, but obviously you guys are not going anywhere, because genuinely, guys, go try out the i900 mobility. And that's not like a paid plug. I mean, Matt didn't pay me. I wish he did for this, but he didn't. It's just a lot of fun. iPad scanning is just genuinely fun, and you just have to try it if you're interested in digital dentistry and see where the industry is going. So once again, Matt, I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, so thanks so much for joining me.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Ahmad. Appreciate it. Take care.
And that's another episode of the Digital Dentistry Decoded podcast, guys. Thank you so much for listening and supporting us. Like, comment, share, all the social things, and share it with your colleagues. It does a lot of good for us and spreading the word about digital dentistry. I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.